Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we unpack compelling sources and extract the insights that, well, really matter. Have you ever stopped to consider that some of the most profound practical leadership wisdom might be hiding right there in plain sight?
Yeah, in places maybe we don't usually look for, say, business insights.
Exactly. And that's precisely what we're exploring today.
hmm
We're diving into this really extraordinary collection of wisdom from Steve Moore's book, The Top 10 Leadership Conversations in the Bible.
It's a fascinating premise, and like you said, this isn't really about theology lessons, not in the typical sense. It's much more about pulling out these universal principles for leading.
That's it. And, I want to be clear, this isn't your standard leadership manual, like filled with corporate buzzwords. It's really a fresh look at how these ancient texts often just seen as spiritual guides, how they can offer really profound, actionable leadership insights for you right now. Doesn't matter what your background is. Moore actually calls the Bible a target-rich environment for leadership data,
That's a great phrase for it.
isn't it? And our mission today is basically to uncover some of those surprising facts, those aha moments that could genuinely change how you lead.
Yeah, exactly. And Moore's big idea, his sort of overarching point, is that everything truly valuable we can learn about leadership, it has roots in these ancient texts, and that anyone can learn to read and study them with what he calls leadership eyes.
Leadership eyes, I like that.
It means looking for these principles that shape, well, every aspect of effective leadership, understanding yourself, inspiring others, making decisions. It's all in there.
Okay, so let's jump in. Let's unpack this. Our first deep dive segment, it focuses on a concept. Moore calls the power of favor.
Right favor.
He argues that, being gifted, having the training that's essential, obviously, but it's just not enough. To be really effective as leaders, he says you will need this element of external, almost unearned advantage, something he calls the favor of God.
And he makes a really critical distinction there. It's important. He explains it like this. God's power that moves through us to impact others. Think of a gifted speaker moving an audience, right?
Okay, yeah. Or a skilled problem solver finding a breakthrough.
Exactly. That's power working through you. But God's favor that moves through others to open doors for us, it's about those, almost lucky breaks, those unexpected people who step up to help.
Serendipity, maybe.
Yeah.
Opportunities that just appear, things you couldn't possibly have planned.
That's it. And the prime biblical example he uses is Joseph. I mean, his journey is it's mind-blowing.
Totally. A young guy, a dreamer, sold into slavery by his own brothers.
Yeah. And yet he rises up to become second in command of Egypt, the whole nation. It's just an incredible story of this idea of favor in action.
The text itself really emphasizes it, doesn't it?
Constantly. It says Joseph found favor under Potiphar, who was this high-ranking Egyptian official, and Potiphar puts him in charge of his entire household. Then, even when he's falsely accused, thrown into prison, he still found favor with the warden, ends up basically running the prison.
It's like it follows him.
It does. And this favor, it all culminates when he interprets Pharaoh's dreams. That leads directly to his position where he literally saves entire nations from famine, including his own family, ironically. It just shows how these external forces kind of align to lift him way beyond his terrible circumstances.
That's just incredible. And Moore doesn't just leave it in ancient history, right? He has a modern story, too.
Yeah, he shares this really powerful personal anecdote, brings it right into today. He talks about a mission trip to this really remote part of Asia. He was with a highly skilled video crew.
Top people, right.
Absolutely. World-class folks from business, ministry, really gifted, well-prepared. They had all the skills, the resources, but they hit situations where their abilities just weren't enough. They were stuck. And that's where this local guide, Moore calls him David, just unexpectedly stepped in. He meets one of the crew members almost by chance. And David, because he felt this personal need to repay a kindness he'd once received from a Catholic priest, he offers to guide them. And this favor, this completely unexpected help, it opened doors to villages, religious sites, places they absolutely could not have gotten into otherwise.
So the footage they got?
It wasn't just good, it was compelling. It actually catalyzed this whole network of churches and organizations, leading to significant positive impact among that people group. Their talent was essential, sure, but David's favor, that was the key that unlocked everything.
So it really drives home the point. Even the most capable leaders, with all the talent, all the preparation, they often need that something extra. that unearned advantage, that favor.
It's a pattern you see again and again, even outside religious contexts. Think about Billy Graham, for instance. Back in 1949, during his big Los Angeles Crusades, William Randolph Hearst, the media mogul who Graham had never even met, sent this short 2-word telegram to all his newspaper editors. It just said, "Puff Graham."
Puff Graham, seriously.
Seriously. And that simple directive led to massive unsolicited media coverage. It just unexpectedly launched Graham onto the national stage. That was favor, opening doors he couldn't have possibly opened himself.
But it's not automatic, is it? More also includes a warning.
Yes, a very important cautionary tale. He talks about an experience Hermano Pablo, a translator, had with an evangelist. This evangelist showed immense power. Healings were reported, lots of conversions, dramatic stuff.
Okay.
But he clearly lacked favor. There was this hidden character flaw. He was seen with a prostitute. And this illustrates a really critical point, that an individual's power to achieve results, to get things done, that can still be very evident. Sometimes it's because of the faith of the people receiving the message or just the power of the message itself. But personal favor, the kind that opens doors for the leader, the kind that often relies on integrity and trust, that can be completely missing.
Ah, okay. So performance and personal reputation, or maybe character. They're distinct things.
Very distinct. It's a sobering thought.
So for you listening, how do we position ourselves for this kind of favor? For those unexpected advantages? Moore says there's no magic formula, right?
No, definitely not a formula. But he suggests Joseph's life points to key attributes that seem to, let's say, invite it or create the right conditions for it.
Okay, what are they?
He highlights 3 qualities you can actively cultivate: purity, capacity, and humility.
Purity, capacity, humility. Let's break those down a bit. Purity.
Yeah, and he's careful here. It's not about, earning God's love, which he'd say is unconditional. It's more about living with integrity, being trustworthy. That kind of character naturally opens doors for trust and opportunity, both in life and leadership.
Okay, makes sense. And capacity.
Capacity is about effectiveness. Like Joseph being really good at managing Potiphar's household, or later Egypt's resources. Or think of the biblical Daniel, known for his wisdom, being 10 times better. It's about diligently developing your skills, working hard, getting results. Often this happens behind the scenes, you know, out of the spotlight, just building competence.
Right, building the foundation. And the third one, humility.
Humility. And this was key for both Joseph and Daniel. They consistently gave credit beyond themselves, either to God or to others. They understood that real influence doesn't just come from your own efforts. It's about acknowledging the bigger picture, the contributions of others, maybe even a higher power. These 3, purity, capacity, humility, they create the soil where favor can grow.
That's really helpful. Okay, let's shift gears to the second big idea. More presence. Perspective.
Ah, yes, perspective.
He calls it a leadership differentiator. He actually says, leaders see what followers don't. The most effective leaders see what other leaders don't.
That's a powerful claim.
It is. It's about more than just seeing things. It's how you interpret them. Perspective helps you understand where you are, maybe where you've come from and where you're trying to go, ideally from a broader, more objective viewpoint.
It's like having a better map, doesn't it, for navigating the complexities of leadership. Moore uses this fantastic, really relatable story to make the point. His daughter's high school cheerleading squad.
Oh, yeah.
They lost a football game, 36-year, a total blowout. But his daughter comes home and describes their performance as pretty good.
Pretty good after 36 year.
Laughs. Yeah. And her reason was, well, we got to do the first down cheer twice. Last year, we never even got to do it once.
Oh, my goodness. That is classic. It's all about perspective, isn't it?
Yeah.
They were focused on this tiny internal metric, completely missing the bigger picture of the game's outcome.
Exactly. And that ability to step back to see the whole field, not just your little part of it, that's the leadership differentiator.
So how does this play out in the biblical context he uses?
He goes to the story of the 12 spies. Moses sends 12 leaders to scout out the promised land, Canaan. They all go together, they see the same things, gather the exact same data.
Okay, what did they see?
They saw it was an amazing land, flowing with milk and honey, rich, fertile. But they also saw powerful inhabitants, fortified cities, even giants, intimidating obstacles. Same data for everyone.
But their interpretation?
Wildly different. 10 of those spies basically had what Moore calls a grasshopper moment. They saw the obstacles, looked at themselves, and felt tiny, insignificant, fearful, like grasshoppers compared to the giants.
So they focused on the threat.
Totally. And they came back and spread this bad report, this narrative of fear, which completely paralyzed the people.
But 2 of them didn't.
Right. Joshua and Caleb. They had the exact same data, saw the same giants, the same fortified cities, but they had a better perspective. Their view wasn't just focused on the obstacles. It was grounded in a larger vision, in confidence about their strategic advantages, or in this case, God's promises. They said, "We can certainly do it. The Lord is with us." They saw the challenge through a lens of possibility.
So same facts, different story based on perspective.
Precisely. And Moore adds a crucial warning here about presumption. Later, the people, feeling guilty, tried to go into the land anyway, but this time without that divine backing or clear strategy. They were soundly defeated. It shows that just having hope or optimism isn't a strategy if it's not grounded in the right perspective and direction.
That's a really key distinction. Moore also shares his own vulnerability here, right? About his own grasshopper moments.
He does. He talks about when he first became president and CEO of an organization, EFMA. He felt completely overwhelmed, inadequate. Then another CEO asked him this seemingly innocent question, something like, "So do you know what the board was thinking when they hired you?"
Ouch. That sounds intimidating.
It hit him hard. He said he just wanted to crawl under the table. He felt like a total imposter, a grasshopper.
We've all been there, I think.
Absolutely. But then he mentions how an affirmation from a mentor, Greg Livingstone, helped him gain better perspective on himself, on his unique skills and preparation for that specific role. It helped him reframe his self-view.
And he connects this to Gideon, too.
Yeah, Gideon's classic grasshopper moment from the Bible. Gideon, called to lead Israel against invaders, saw himself as the least in my family, from the weakest clan. It's a perfect example of how comparison and negative self-talk can just cripple our perspective and our potential to lead.
So practically speaking, for you listening, how do we cultivate this better perspective in our own leadership roles?
Moore really emphasizes self-awareness, deep, honest self-awareness. Being truthful with yourself about your strengths, yes, but also your weaknesses, your blind spots, and being open enough to let others speak into that.
So humility plays a role here, too.
Definitely. It means striving to see yourself, your team, your challenges from a broader, more objective viewpoint. Maybe seeing yourself as God sees you, as Moore puts it, trusting, like Joshua and Caleb, that the Lord is with us, or that you have the necessary resources and support even when facing big challenges. It's an ongoing practice, really, aligning your view with reality and your ultimate goals.
Okay, this leads us nicely into the third key insight, humility. Moore calls it a counterintuitive strength.
Yes, counterintuitive, because sometimes we associate leadership with, strong confidence, maybe even a bit of swagger. But Moore argues humility is the universal antidote for hubris.
Hubris, that excessive pride, disguised as overconfidence.
Exactly. And he says that overconfidence is one of the most dangerous traps for leaders, maybe even more dangerous than incompetence, especially at higher levels.
Why is that?
Because overconfidence makes you fall in love with your own ideas. You become rigid. You stop listening to people who disagree with you. It whispers in your ear, "You're really smart. You're probably right. You've got this." And that leads to blind spots, poor decisions, even ethical lapses.
And the ultimate role model for leadership humility, according to Moore.
It has to be Jesus. Moore shares another incredibly raw, personal story here, a real God moment, he calls it, that drove this point home for him in a visceral way.
The story about being arrested.
That's the one. On a mission trip, he gets arrested, put in a holding cell, and the guard tells him to clean this absolutely filthy bathroom.
Oh, wow.
And he describes this initial wave of repulsion, not just at the physical dirt, but at the sheer humiliation, the assault on his pride, his status as a leader.
I can only imagine.
But as he started cleaning, reluctantly at first, he said it became this profound moment of reflection. He started thinking about Jesus making himself nothing. The incarnation God becoming human, serving, washing feet. And he describes this shift happening inside him, from feeling repulsed and degraded to actually finding a kind of joy in doing that menial, humble task.
That's powerful. It revealed how deep pride can hide, even when you think you're serving.
Exactly. And this danger of overconfidence isn't just anecdotal. Moore mentions Malcolm Gladwell's insight.
Right, that overconfidence is often a bigger problem than incompetence at higher leadership levels.
Yes, because the systems and forces that tend to weed out incompetence as you rise, they can actually feed overconfidence in those who succeed. Success breeds confidence, which can then tip over into overconfidence if you're not careful.
And this can lead to something subtle but dangerous, what Dallas Willard called accidental Phariseeism.
Accidental Phariseeism. Willard observed that outward success, achieving goals, getting results, it can subtly shift a leader's focus away from their core purpose or values. Service to Christ replaces love for Christ, as Willard put it in a religious context, but the principle applies broadly.
So you become consumed by the mechanics of leadership, survival, status, performance.
Right. Mistaking busyness for importance.
Yeah.
You unconsciously start serving the mission statement rather than truly living out the values it represents. Performing for the organization's sake, not embodying its soul. It's a subtle trap.
So how did Jesus model this antidote, this humility, in practical ways leaders can emulate? Moore outlines these 4 postures of humility based on a passage in Philippians 2.
Yeah, they're incredibly insightful. The first posture is, no status belongs to me. Jesus, even though he was divine, did not consider equality with God something to be grasped or clung to.
So letting go of the need for position, title, recognition.
Exactly. That constant temptation leaders face. It's so easy to spot in others, isn't it? But so hard to see in ourselves. Humble leadership prioritizes purpose over clinging to position.
Okay, the second posture.
No service is beneath me. Jesus made himself nothing, taking the very nature of a servant. The classic example is him washing his disciples' feet, a job for the lowest slave.
And Moore had that Booker T. Washington story, too.
Right. Washington, the famous educator, chopping wood for a wealthy woman, she thought he was just a hired hand at first. But his quiet dignity, his willingness to do the work without pretense, and the quality of it, it so impressed her that she later became a major donor to his school. It shows that true leaders aren't above any task that serves the greater good.
Powerful. Third posture.
No sacrifice is too great for me. Jesus humbled himself and became obedient to death, even death on a cross. This is a direct challenge to leaders who start focusing on the perks and privileges rather than the cost of leadership.
Right. Prioritizing comfort over contribution.
Yeah. Moore quotes the missionary C.T. Stead. If Jesus Christ be God and died for me, then no sacrifice is too great for me to make for him. It's about that willingness to pay a personal price for the mission.
And the fourth posture of humility.
No success is because of me. Jesus himself said things like, the Son can do nothing by himself, and I seek not to please myself, but him who sent me. Humble leaders get this. They understand success is almost never a solo act.
So they give credit where it's due.
Always. They acknowledge the team, the circumstances, maybe external help, or even divine providence. They say, it wasn't just me. Give glory to God, give praise to others.
And Moore points out those magic words of humble leadership, right?
Yes. Leaders who are trustworthy, who build real psychological safety, are willing to say, I was wrong, and crucially, I don't know.
Which overconfidence absolutely prevents.
It does. Overconfidence leads to rationalizing, blaming, covering up. Humility allows for honesty and learning. Saying, I was wrong or I don't know isn't weakness. It's a sign of deep security and trustworthiness.
And again, it's not just this perfect ideal. We see it in flawed human leaders too, like Peter.
Absolutely. Peter starts off so brash, so sure of himself. Remember him telling Jesus he'd never deny him?
Yeah, and then he fails spectacularly.
Exactly. He crashes and burns, but that failure humbles him deeply. And then he's restored, forgiven. And later he's the one writing, God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. He learned it the hard way. His journey is just a huge encouragement for you listening, that humility isn't about never failing, it's about learning from failure and finding strength in acknowledging your limits.
Okay, so we've talked favor, perspective, humility. How do these tie together into action? This leads to the final point, mobilization.
Right. Moore argues these principles, favor, perspective, humility, are foundational. They help you become what he calls a Bible-centered leader, someone whose life and leadership are genuinely shaped by these deep, timeless values. Someone devoted not just to knowing the principles, but actually studying, applying, embodying them. Like the biblical figure Ezra, who dedicated himself to understanding and living out ancient wisdom.
And the ultimate example of putting wisdom into action, of mobilization.
Again, Moore points to Jesus as the greatest mobilizer of all time, especially through what's known as the Great Commission, his final command to his followers. Go and make disciples of all nations. This wasn't just a suggestion. It was a directive for a massive global action, a huge mobilization effort.
But it wasn't instant, was it? Moore notes something interesting about the early apostles.
Yeah, it's fascinating. He points out that even though they got the command directly from Jesus, they were extraordinarily slow to actually act on the all nations part.
Really? Why?
Well, they needed a radical shift in their own perspective, particularly about non-Jewish people, the Gentiles. It took time, even divine intervention in Peter's case, before the message really started moving beyond their familiar cultural boundaries. It shows even with a clear command, perspective can be a bottleneck.
That leads into another story, a catalyst for mobilization. William Carey.
Yes, a great example. William Carey, 1786, England. He's just a 26-year-old pastor. And he stands up in a minister's meeting and asks this question: is the Great Commission, Jesus' command to go to all nations, still binding on us today?
Bold question for a young guy. How did that go down?
Not well initially.
Hmm.
The chairman, an older, respected minister, famously shut him down, told him something like, "Young man, sit down. When God pleases to convert the heathen, he will do it without your aid or mine."
Wow. Talk about discouraging.
Right. But Carey persisted. He wrote a book, he kept advocating, he kept pushing, and eventually he mobilized the church in England, sailed to India himself, and became known as the father of Protestant missions. He turned his personal conviction into a massive, sustained movement. That's mobilization.
So mobilization is more than just having a good idea.
Much more. Moore calls it a leadership cocktail. It requires vision, absolutely, but also effective communication to share that vision, and deep motivation, the why, that compels people to actually move, to take action.
And this connects to a challenge Moore raises about how we sometimes define maturity, particularly in religious or value-driven contexts.
Yes, he critiques what he sees as a common knowledge-based definition of spiritual maturity in modern Christianity, and maybe in other fields too. We often equate maturity with how much someone knows, how many books they've read, seminars attended, facts accumulated.
But Jesus measured it differently.
According to Moore, yes. Jesus seemed to measure maturity primarily by obedience, by whether people actually did what they heard or learned. He uses the parable of the wise and foolish builders from Luke 6.
Right, the ones who built their houses on rock versus sand.
Exactly. Both builders heard Jesus' words. The difference wasn't knowledge, it was action. Only the wise builder acted on the words, put them into practice, built on a solid foundation. The foolish one heard but didn't do.
So the crucial point is,
Moore puts it starkly: a Jesus follower, or any follower of a principle with limited knowledge that is matched by obedience, is more mature and effective than a person with lots of knowledge but little obedience. That gap between knowing and doing, that's critical.
the smaller the gap, the greater the impact.
Precisely. He argues the gap between knowledge and obedience directly impacts things like faith and spiritual power, or maybe we could say conviction and effectiveness. When the gap is small, when you consistently act on what you know to be true, your conviction, your power, your impact, they all grow.
Okay, so if a leader wants to mobilize people to bridge that gap between knowledge and action, how do they motivate people effectively? Moore mentions 3 systems.
Yes, he identifies 3 core motivational systems that are seen biblically but are also just, well, universal aspects of human nature. Leaders use them all the time, consciously or not.
What are they?
First, there's fear of punishment or negative consequences. Second, there's hope of reward or positive incentives. And third, there's loving relationship, or perhaps more broadly, a shared purpose and mutual respect.
Okay, fear, reward, relationship purpose.
Right. And while that third one, mobilizing through shared purpose and strong relationships, is often seen as the ideal, especially for mature teams or followers, Moore suggests that realistically, an integrated approach is often necessary. Depending on the person's maturity level, the context, the urgency of the task, you might need to lean on different motivators at different times. The most effective leaders understand which system fits the situation.
That makes sense. Wow, we've covered a lot of ground. Favor, perspective, humility, mobilization.
We really have just scratched the surface, haven't we, of the kind of actionable leadership wisdom Moore finds embedded in these texts.
Definitely. And the key takeaway seems to be that these aren't just dusty old stories. They're presented as dynamic blueprints, potentially, for your leadership, whether you're leading a huge organization, a small team, your family, or even just trying to lead yourself more effectively.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe a final thought to consider. Moore mentions G. Campbell Morgan, this renowned preacher and scholar from a century ago. Morgan reached a point where he burned years' worth of his own sermons.
Burn them. Why?
Because he felt he'd been relying too much on his own cleverness, his own insights. He wanted to commit to being purely God's messenger, not just a preacher. And he said, reflecting on his renewed commitment to studying the source text, that Bible found me.
That Bible found me. That's provocative.
Isn't it? So the question for you is, What in your sources, the books you read, the research you do, your own life experiences, what will truly find you? What leadership insights, maybe ones you've overlooked or undervalued, will genuinely grab hold of you and reshape your path?
Yeah, what will move you from just knowing something to actually acting on it? We really hope you continue this deep dive in your own life, seeking out that kind of timeless wisdom that can really transform your leadership journey.
And ultimately help you leave a truly lasting, positive legacy.